All right, this lesson is talking about graphing linear equations in slope-intercept form, and this is just part one. The thing that we're focusing on this section is we are focusing everything about slope. How to find the slope from a graph, how to find the slope from a table, how to find the slope from a word problem, and how to find the slope from 2 points. So first of all, what we need to do is we need to even know what slope is. All right, slope is just rise over run. The formula for slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And it's also a rate of change. And when you change, it's your vertical over your horizontal. That's why it's y's over x's and rise over run. It's your vertical over your horizontal. There is an abbreviation for slope, and it's the letter M. So whenever you see the letter M, you need to know that that is talking about slope. All right, so there are 4 different types of slopes. There's 4 different things that lines can do. The first type of line you can have is a horizontal line. And a horizontal line just goes left to right. A horizontal line has a 0 slope. The next type of line you can have is a vertical line. And a vertical line actually has an undefined slope. And sometimes people get confused with these, but the way you remember it is if I'm walking on a horizontal line, I'm walking at no elevation, it's 0. But I can't walk on a vertical line. There's no way you're physically able to walk up a vertical line, okay? You get a vertical line when there's a 0 on the bottom. So when you divide any number by 0, you're going to get an error, which is undefined. The next thing you can have is you can have a slope that goes up. This is called a rising slope, and it's a positive slope. When we read slopes, we read them like a book going left to right, and so from left to right, this slope points up. The next type you can have is one that goes down, and this is called a falling slope, which is a negative slope. So you can have a positive, a negative, a horizontal, or a vertical. Now there's a little slope guide that helps you remember. The first thing you could do is go up, and those are positives. Then you can go down, and those are negatives. You can have vertical lines, which are undefined, or you can have horizontal lines, which are zeros. And there's slope guide, and slope guide might help you remember the direction for everything. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to spend some time practicing counting slope. When you count, you only count your steps. You don't count where you started. So let's look at number 1. So what I have to do is I got to figure out how many I go up to get from my point here to my point here. I would suggest always start at left point. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I don't want to have to deal with double negatives. Remember, double negatives make a positive, and then there's just more room for mistakes. So if you circle the point on the left and figure out how many you have to go up or how many you go down, it'll work. If you go up, it should be a positive number, and if you go down, it's a negative number. Once you figure out that number, that's the top of the fraction. If you go to the right, it's a positive number. If you go to the left, it's a negative number. So we get rise over run. So I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I went up 7, so it's a positive 7. And now I have to figure out how many I have to go over. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I rose 7, and I went over 4. And if you think about going over it, that means it's on top. And so there's the slope of number 1. For number 2, again, I'm going to start on my left. This time I have to go down. So I have to go down 1, 2, 3. So since I went down, it's a negative 3. And then I go to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I went down 3 and to the right 5. If you were to go the other way, you would have went up 3 and then to the left 5. But those are the same answers. It really doesn't matter where the negative is. This is the preferred answer because negatives usually are not on the bottom of fractions. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to try the rest of these problems, and then you can compare with what we have to see how you did. Okay, so let's look at 3 and 4. Depending on your direction you went for 3, you got a different answer. For 4, you should be able to reduce it. So I'd like you to be able to reduce whenever you can. Okay, there's 5 and 6. And again, depending on where you went, that's the answer, but the negative on top is the best answer. And then here's your answers for 7 and 8. All right, the next type of problem we have is where we're going to be graphing the slope. Now, when you graph a slope, you have to know where to start. You can't just start off by graphing, counting rise over run, because we don't have a starting point. This is my starting point. So it's telling me to start at 5, negative 2, and it's telling me to rise 1 and run 2. So I'm going to go up 1 and over 2. I'm kind of off the graph, but that's okay. But now I want to continue the other way. The same thing as 1 over 2 is exactly the same as negative 1 over negative 2, because 2 negatives become a positive. So I'm going to go down 1 to the left 2. And if you notice, that makes that straight line. And so there's the linear function for that one. All right, let's look at number 12. Number 12 is 0, 4. So I'm going to go 0, 4. And slope has to be a fraction, so I need to make this a fraction. So this tells me I'm going to go down 3 and to the right 1. So down 1, 2, 3 to the right 1. And I'm going to continue that pattern until I go off the grid. And then I'm going to try and go up here. 1, 2, 3 over 1. So it's 1 off the grid, but that's okay. And there's the linear function. Okay. So what I'd like you to do is try doing those problems on your own. And when you're ready, press play and you can check your work. Okay, so go ahead and look at your answers for 13. There's 13 and then 14, 15, 16. If you made a mistake, look and see what it was. Was it the slope or did you start at the wrong point? There can be a couple different places you can make mistakes. So make sure you understand that you got them right and you understand why. All right, so let's go back to our notes so that we can do our last type of problem. And our last type of problem that we're dealing with today is when I give you an equation. Or not an equation, but when I give you points and I don't have a graph because we can't count it. Well, I'm going to write this equation in the middle because this is my slope formula and I'm going to use this a bunch today. My suggestion is write this every time. If you write this every time you do a problem for 5 or 10 problems, then you'll have it memorized. And so I have x1, y1, x2, y2. One thing you need to make sure is that it's not x, x, y, y. It's always x, y, x, y. And so I plug it in my formula. Y2 is negative 1 minus y1, negative 4. And then x2, which is 5, minus x1, which is 2. So I circle my points. A negative 1 plus 4 is 3. 5 minus 2 is 3. And now I can reduce this because 3 divided by 3 is 1. So the slope of my equation, or the slope of my line that passes through those 2 points is 1. So you go ahead and start this next one. Start off by labeling your points and then plugging it in. And once you have that, do the math so that you're able to simplify it and see what the slope is that passes through those points. So you should have labeled x1, y1, x2, y2. And when I plug it in, my y2 value is 2 minus my y1 value, that's 3. And if you're asking or if you're curious, yes, it is always minus. Sometimes they'll turn positive, but the formula says to minus, so we minus. And so now it's going to be y or x2, because we're on the bottom, -4 minus -4. So I have two negatives on the bottom, so that becomes positive. 2 minus 3 is -1, and -4 plus 4 is 0. So this problem, you're not allowed to divide by 0, so this is undefined. So that's a vertical line. So when you're dealing with slope, remember that you can count if you have it, or you can use the slope formula. Sometimes you're going to be given a table, and you can use the slope formula again, or you can look for patterns. But remember, slope is rise over run, which means you go up and down before you go left and right.